Hey friends, welcome back to the Big Talk podcast. I'm your host, Tricia Brouk, founder of the Big Talk Academy, award-winning director, producer, and author, and this is episode 458. In today's episode, I am so excited to introduce you to the inspiring and amazing Amanda Walker. Amanda is a master coach in life and business. She's the creator of the Best Damn Coach podcast and program. She's been featured in Forbes, Today Online, Catalyst Athletics, and her signature approach involves helping women create sustainable habits and develop a true love for themselves. Her featured B.D.C method helps coaches increase coaching mastery and build the skill of growing a thriving business. All right, everybody, let's do this. Amanda, it is so awesome to have you here with me and our audience on the Big Talk. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to join y'all.
Me too. So we start with backstory here at the Big Talk podcast. I love thinking about who a character is before they get to page one of the script. You can start back as far as you like. Think about everything that you want to share with our audience and what brought you here today with me.
I think there's so many of those touch points, right, that influence our life. But as I've progressed further through the journey of growing my business, I realized that there was one yes that I made in my life that really changed the trajectory and has led me to what I do now. And I think that was saying yes to my first, I guess, quote unquote, real job, which was coaching basketball like to 4 and 5 year old boys. Um, and truthfully, why I share that moment was it was the first time that I put myself in a position to like put my expertise and knowledge. I've been an athlete my whole life, but to be in front of a group of children at the time, of people now, who really looked to me to have leadership, and I had to find my voice and I had to find my way of communicating them. That was required me to have a lot of flexibility when you're guiding 4 and 5 year olds, but it also lit up in me the realization that you can influence a person so much and say things and guide them to really move towards their potential. And I don't think I realized how impactful that was until now, because that truly began my journey of, what later became 25 years of coaching.
All right, amazing. Let's go back even further. Where did you grow up? How did you end up coaching little boys basketball and then move into why and how you teach people to feel good naked now?
Yeah. So, I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a native. I'm 40 now. I've been here my whole life. My husband as well, which is rare to find. And sports have been a really influential part of my life since, I was a dancer and then moved into team sports, basketball, volleyball, track throughout. But I think that with that said, I think that there's this element of sport and competition that drives this like next level of performance, and that has always been something that I've been passionate about. And when I went out and I was like, okay, mom and dad, I want to have a job. They didn't allow me to work in the school year at that point, but wanted me to find a summer job. I think at that point I didn't realize it, but I really did have the belief I could be paid doing something I love. And I really didn't want to go work like a traditional job, like flipping hamburgers or at the grocery store at that point. So I sought out areas where I felt, that potential. And so I reached out to a local boys and girls club, and they were looking for somebody to come in and coach basketball specifically. And I was like, okay, this is it. It's meant to be. This is my place to begin.
That's amazing. Let's talk a little bit about how being a former dancer and an athlete serve you as someone who is a leader and who has your own company and podcast and who serves others, and how that backstory has
Mm.
enabled you to be so successful now.
I was very interesting that you say this, because last night I was at my son, it runs track now, and I was at his practice. And so when he is on the track, I kind of squeeze in my workout sometimes too. And so last night I was running, and it's hot in Arizona already. It's like 105 degrees. And so it's 4 o'clock on the afternoon, the most brutal time of day. And I'd made this, commitment to myself inside that I was going to use that space to work out. And as I sat there recovering, I was actually, thinking back through all of this time frame in my life. But I think the one thing that was a theme through each of these experiences in my life, from dance to, years of sports down the road, is that nobody can do the work for you. Right? When you're performing in a game, when you're performing on a stage, when you're building a business, when you're leading clients, like I was always willing to bet on myself. And I pull that into my coaching. I think that the coaching world right now, there's some, it's growing. It's a $20 billion industry currently projected to grow in 22, the rest of this year into 2023. I think there's a market for coaches, and some tend to coach people away from themselves. It's my belief that I want to empower all of my clients to come back to themselves and understand that, like, at the end of the day, you're responsible for your feelings, your emotion, your performance. And I think that athletics definitely were influential for me to understand that about myself.
I love that so much. When you're on stage as a dancer, I can only speak to being on stage as a dancer. I sort of played sports, but not like you. And if I'm not warmed up, if I don't do the plies, it's my problem when I can't do the triple pirouette, right?
Mm-hmm,
And I
mm-hmm.
love that you're talking about how we need to take responsibility for our own actions. And when you are coaching someone, how do you inspire them to take responsibility for their own decisions? Because I know that's something that a lot of my speakers, they all want to know, how do I get on big stages? How do I do this? Well, ultimately I can support you, but you've got to make the decision that you are worthy of being on big stages first.
Yeah, I mean, worthiness is like a really deep part of the coaching conversation. I think that for me, it's the reason we seek results in our life in general is to feel that sense of worthiness and to explore like what our human potential really is. I think that co-creation in coaching is really an important and overlooked. I call it one of the three elements of effective coaching. Co-creation is a huge part of that. And what I mean by that is, I am not the one in the coaching relationship shaking my finger at my client saying, go do X, Y, and Z. I'm exploring with them what are the action steps that they feel like they need to take. Like, okay, I need to be in front of more people. I need to be more visible, right? If we're both clear on that, then like what's the block? What's stopping us from moving forward to go pitch ourselves, or, whatever the case is. And oftentimes, right, I think the root of it is the fear of uncomfortable emotion, right? And so we make this story up in our minds that emotion is so big and it's uncomfortable, true. And so we don't necessarily have a willingness to fully feel that emotion. And so if I can help clients sit in mini versions of this, right, and start to feel like, oh, that emotion actually it wasn't as painful as I expected, then I think it's like the domino that leads to more dominoes in their journey.
When did you find your voice so that you could support others in having the dream life that they desire?
I think that, I mean, like you just asked about clients, I was on a 10-year anniversary trip with my husband. This is 6-ish years ago, actually 6 years specifically. And I think that, I was dabbling in business. I would say it was a hobby in the beginning. I kind of stumbled upon business. I was an accidental entrepreneur. And I was completely playing small for this exact reason I just mentioned. That fear of failure, I guess, would be probably the most identifiable, thing that was blocking me. But I remember I was tuning into a podcast, Amy Porterfield's podcast. I want to give credit to where it's credit due. It's still my number one most listened to podcast. And I remember she was having a conversation with, I think it was Jasmine Star. And I was totally glued. And I had this moment of just, it's like palpable energy. I can even feel it. We were like driving down the highway one, we were listening to this podcast, and I looked at my husband and I was just like, it's fear. Like, it's fear is stopping me. And that, I don't know if this is really answering your question directly, but for me, it was that permission that I gave myself to establish my voice and to put myself in a position to even begin to explore like what my voice in this space would even sound like.
Mm.
And then from there, I think practice and repetition and failure, helped me grow that since then.
How do you, Amanda, connect having your voice now with using your voice? And what's the relationship to identifying it first and moving into actually using it in service?
Yeah, that's a tough that's a tough question. Um, I think giving yourself permission is step one, right? And finding it over time comes from being able to be in front of clients specifically and finding your own flair for coaching. One of the things that I see coaches struggle with is they're afraid to just call a client out, if you will, on their own stuff, right? And so what happens is we sit back and we actually hold our clients back from the opportunity for massive success and breakthrough. And so I think using my voice as a coach and speaking that truth into their life is the ripple effect that causes their voice then to be available to them. And so that's where I think that the service comes from, right? Is us standing in our truth and getting, out of the way of our limiting decisions so that their voice becomes accessible to them.
That is so powerful. And everyone who's listening and watching, I just want to highlight that Amanda is talking about how you are being of service to your clients or to your community or to your family. And if you're afraid to speak the truth because you don't want to ruffle someone's feathers or you don't believe that what you're seeing is valid, you are preventing that person, that family member, that community member, that client from actually having the benefit of your eyes. That's why we hire coaches so that we can get their eyes on us, right, Amanda?
Yes, yes, totally agree.
And I hear you. I often think, how do I say this to a client who is phoning it in or reaching into their bag of tricks when they're on stage delivering a talk? Because I need to. So I think it's us, you and I, as coaches, as mentors, understanding that we need to use our voice no matter what. And we need to also think about how to use it in order to speak that truth and to mentor and to give that feedback without completely deflating someone. What's the best advice that you can give our listeners on how to use your voice when you are about to give somebody a blow,
Yeah. So I
a
always go
truth
back to,
blow?
yeah, well, I always go back to something I teach clients called the love, truth, love sandwich. And it's first like to really love on them because my personal belief is, through my love of my clients, like that's how we change the world. And so I want to show that in every aspect, but I also am not hired to be their friend, right? I'm hired to be a guide in their life and be able to see that, from a neutral standpoint. So I always encourage the love, truth, love sandwich. So it's love. So you're like, hey, something that really acknowledges them and validates them. Like, I love that, thing that you just said. And what I also notice is that, and then you're inserting the truth part of it, right? The part you want to call out. And then you always tie it with a completion bow of acknowledging and again, validating them in some capacity. So that love, truth, love allows you to enter in softly, speak your truth, and then exit in a way that they still feel supported. And sometimes the more rapport you build with a client, right, the less that matters. And I'll have clients often say, like, don't sugarcoat it. Don't give me the love, truth, love. Just like tell me what I need to hear. And to me, that's the ultimate testament to rapport building with your client, that when they're ready, to experience that, you've done a really good job.
That's so good. And I just highlight also that I think the love, truth, love sandwich can be applied in marriage as well.
100% into parenting, anywhere, anytime you're communicating with someone. The grocery store clerk, another great example.
Awesome. Awesome. Let's talk about what it means to feel amazing naked.
Yeah, so this is kind of a brand that came to me. This is kind of where the roots of my business began, in the health and wellness space. And to me, Feel Amazing Naked just means you feeling so confident in your skin and loving who you are and understanding that we don't have to change external circumstances in our life to feel good right now. So that's really where the bulk of my coaching began. And most recently, though, we're actually kind of like putting that brand to rest. And it's funny, we're talking so much about coaching because my new focus is really diving in with coaches and looking more at the art of coaching and having some of these deeper, discussions around the art of coaching, the skill of business building, because I, hindsight's 2020, I can look back and see I've been building this, this whole catalog of coaching experiences that have happened. And so it's super exciting to kind of be spinning towards a new direction and use everything I learned in the Feel Amazing Naked kind of brand to help move me forward.
Amazing. Let's talk a little bit about that idea of you coaching. Is it coaching coaches?
Yeah, so we are really building out what I like to call a practice playground. What happens often is coaches go out and they get certifications, or they're just inspired by passion in their own hero's journey, right, to start guiding people. But they don't have confidence necessarily solely in their abilities, right? Just because you get a certification doesn't mean that you're prepared to lead people. And so we want to bridge that gap from that passion, that certification, to help go out and create a thriving practice or thriving business. And I don't see that there's a lot of opportunity out there to build both simultaneously. So inside our community, that's what we do. We have support around, what do I do when a client doesn't show up? What do I do when a client's not doing their homework? At the same point, talking about like, how do I go out and understand what a lead magnet is and how come clients aren't coming to me? And so we're excited to bridge the gap and bring both of those worlds together.
That's amazing. Amanda, share with our audience and our listeners a little bit about how you are going to use the power of your voice in order to serve coaches. So ultimately, your voice will be the ripple effect to their voice, to their clients, to their voice, to their clients. That's a pretty wide ripple effect. How does that feel? And how are you setting yourself up for success there?
Yeah. I think a really important part of using your voice, no matter what genre, what you're doing, is what I like to call slay the dragons. And so it's like, what part of the industries that what part of the industry that you're currently serving, do you see that there's a gap in? Do you see that maybe you believe, maybe a different perspective than what the norm is being said, right? And so I think that's really a part for me that's important as far as voice is concerned, is to slay those dragons and talk about some of the things in the coaching industry that it's unregulated, right? That there is not a credentialing that's necessary. Like, let's bring that out into the open and talk about why it may present itself as a problem and how we can capitalize on that, instead of just brushing it under the rug. There's so many coaches out there that are afraid to say I'm a coach, just because, there's so many different perspectives around what the coaching industry is. So I think that if I can speak to those dragons, like slaying the beasts that are maybe going to bring us a differing perspective, then I think that gives people the encouragement and inspiration to go out and do the same, no matter if you're speaking on a stage or speaking on a podcast or just to your clients, in a one-to-one setting.
Something that you're saying that really is hitting me is, and I'm making an inference here, we have not discussed this. You are extremely aligned with your values, which is why you can talk about the coaching industry in that way and give voice to something that might make others uncomfortable. And I say that, and I want you to expand on that in just a moment. I say that because I do the same thing when I talk about TEDx producers. You've got to vet them. Nobody's talking about that all of the organizers are not created equal, and most of them don't know how to produce an event.
Wow,
So
yeah.
I love that you're talking about this, and it makes me think, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, that this is because of how aligned you are with your values.
First off, thank you that comes across. I appreciate you. And that is an inference. And I think it's an important one. It's really, honestly, that's what helped me make the decision to really focus my business in a different direction, because I was feeling this energy that wasn't lighting me up in the way I used to. And that's because my values were saying, like, I need to go scream from the mountaintops right now, and support this gap that I don't think is necessarily being well represented. And I don't think, though, and you may disagree or agree, I'd love to know from your perspective too, is when you're starting a business, and granted, I fell into mine kind of, but you're so focused on the monetary parts. Let's make this profitable, right? And that's so much of where I think that's another dragon I like to slay when it comes to coaching. It's beyond the dollar marks. And then we get into business, and we're so bombarded by all the ins and outs and the tasks and the delivery. We get into it 6 months, years down the road, and we're like, oh wait, I never grounded myself in my values. What are my values? And I think that that's a call to really realign yourself, to take some steps back and just say, what are values? So you should know what those are, right? And then how are they showing up in my business? Because typically, that's the red flag. When you're not aligned with your values, there's this internal feeling that comes up. And that to me is always like a gut check to go back and recheck, like where is the value? Where are my values being challenged?
I do think what you're saying makes perfect sense. And I also want to include that many new entrepreneurs are focused on that. And literally, this is the language, 6-figure launch, that they can't get away from that and get into the reason they're doing it. And when you're in alignment with your values, the money will come. You know
That's
that.
it. Yeah. Yep. Very much
I,
agree.
I love that. And for everybody who's listening, when you identify what your values are, be sure to revisit if they're your values now. Sometimes we're growing up with certain values that are no longer in alignment with us. So it's really important that you own your personal current values. And I also recommend that you have values for the company. It's really important that the company also have values. And what you're saying, Amanda, makes perfect sense. That becomes your North Star. When you're making decisions for the company and for the business, think first, are they in alignment with your values? And then once all of that's in alignment, the people, the team, the clients who are not fall away.
Totally agree. And I think it's a sticky situation because, for those that are, in entrepreneurship, one of the things we work on so much is messaging. And the thing I know about my ideal client is when I first meet them, they do really care about the profits, right? So it's this double-edged sword of being able to bring them in and talk about the profit being an influence and that it matters, and then also saying, hey, it's not the only thing though. Like let's really anchor ourselves in why we showed up to do this work together. So it is that, again, like, show them what they want, but give them what they need once you're able to have that relationship and rapport with them to help them, progress.
And that's clearly why you are an influential voice, Amanda.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are you ready for some fast talk?
I think so.
All right. What is your favorite book?
The Big Leap by far. We read it every single round of my Inner Circle Mastermind in pieces, and it was I chunk it out for them, and still to this day, I could read it a million times, and I take away new nuggets.
It's such a good book. Who's your favorite speaker and why?
Um, I don't know if this is an okay answer, but probably my 99-year-old grandma.
I love
And
that.
here is why. Truthfully, I don't know a lot of speakers by name. I've been influenced by their talks. But the reason that she's so good is she has this quiet power, and the way she tells a story just like sucks you in. And I once had a mentor tell me that, Amanda, 25 years of business, it all boils down to your ability to tell a story, which I mean, obviously aligns very much to what you do. And so I think she just has a really great way of telling a story, and it just captivates you.
That's incredible. And I would like for you to invite her to be on the podcast. All right. How do you memorize when you're speaking?
Pictures. Yeah,
Tell
for
me
sure.
more.
Visuals. I mean, I've learned a lot through NLP and hypnotherapy too, of just understanding communication inside. So my ability to recall has even shifted since doing a lot of that work. But I will just chunk out sentences and layer them in my mind into pictures, and like, visual anchors on, however I memorize them. And that's, I think, easiest for me.
Super powerful. That's a great, great way to do it. What do you do the day before you speak, whether it's on stage, on a podcast, on a virtual stage?
I think just taking care of my body is always a consistent. I mean, I feel like I'm speaking on stage every day because, teaching in my group programs, to me, I take just as serious as speaking on a stage, really. So get a lot of great rest, at least 8 hours, stay hydrated. And then, right before something, typically it's some sort of like guided meditation or visualization practice that's really powerful for me.
Amazing. And Amanda, what podcast are you currently obsessed with?
I mean, I kind of already mentioned Amy Porterfield is
Yep.
definitely a go-to, and then Abraham Hicks. Listening to audio track number 16 every single day right now for like the last 90 days, and so super impactful for me.
Amazing. We are going to put all of this in the show notes. Amanda, thank you so much for being a featured guest today on the Big Talk. Where can our listeners get in touch with you? And I think you have a special offer for us.
Yes. So I have, first off, I'm most active social media wise on Instagram. So you can connect with me at A Walk My Way. And I do have a place if you want to learn more about coaching and our program, which is called Best Damn Coach. You can go to Amanda-Walker/more profit, and you can download my freebie there where I walk you through what are the 3 most important steps to help your clients get results and in turn, of course, make more money organically, like you said.
Amazing. Everybody, we'll put those in the show notes. Definitely go over there and grab that free download. Thank you so much for being a featured guest. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We so appreciate you taking the time to tune in to us here at the Big Talk. And remember, your voice matters. Big love, everybody.